So before I kick it over to my colleague to start us off tonight, we'll just do a quick round of introductions so you know who's on the call from Crohn's and Colitis Canada. And then we'll jump into the content. So for those of you who haven't met me, my name's Rachel Narcis. It's Rachel Narcis, even if you have met me, hasn't changed in the last few months. And I am the Director of Community Fundraising here at Crohn's and Colitis Canada. So I oversee both the Gutsy Walk team and the team of staff partners from coast to coast. So your main contact that you've been working on for your local Gutsy Walk is on my team. And I'm happy to be here tonight. And I'm going to quickly throw it to Amara to introduce herself and then Dara.
Hi, I'm Maura, and I recognize some of these names. I've been here for just over 6 years as of a week and a half ago, and I've been on the Gutsy Walk team for 3 years, and it's nice to see all of you guys here.
Hi, my name's Dara Horbets, and I'm also on the Gutsy Walk team. I am a bit of a baby when it comes to the Gutsy Walk team because I only joined it last July, but I've also been with the organization for just over 5 years as well. I started as the development coordinator in Manitoba and decided to take on a different role. So I've been working with these lovely people for getting close to a year now. So yeah. And I guess that takes us to the start of the presentation. So Amara, if you could share. All right. Great. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for the Event Day Experience training. I'm going to go over the agenda, but just before I do, a little bit of housekeeping. As a reminder, Rachel mentioned we are recording the session. So for anybody who joined after we started recording, surprise, we're recording. So we'll have the session recorded so that you can go back and watch it if you have any discrepancies or questions or things you want to go over. If you need to ask a question, we ask that you put it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll save questions for a question period at the end. And yeah, feel free to take notes. You know, if you need to take a bathroom break, take a bathroom break. That's totally cool. Because the recording will be there if you miss a section. So without further ado, this is the agenda of that was the agenda of the day. So we're going to go over some logistics, information about planning a walk route, branding and signage, volunteers, registration, refreshments, entertainment and program, event day activations, teardown, important reminders, and like I said, we'll have a section for questions at the end. So first, we'll go over logistics. This year, we have created event standards for Gutsy Walk. And many of the things that we're going to be talking about today can be found in those Gutsy Walk standards for your walk location. If you haven't yet received a copy of this document, please reach out to your staff partner. They'd be happy to supply you with that. We will also be supplying you with a couple different documents that will be available on the Volunteer Hub, including event day logistics checklist and an event day timeline template, as well as the recording. And we'll talk about the Volunteer Hub a bit later in case you don't have access and how you can get access. So setting up. I think the biggest thing that we all need to do is make sure that we get a good night's sleep the night before Gutsy Walk. I know that it's a very stressful time and everybody wants to make sure that they are ready to go, but make sure you take care of yourself. That's the big thing. So get a good night's sleep. We recommend that you prep any supplies and ensure that you have everything the week before the event. Do a double check the night before. Ensure to plan ahead to determine what time setup is going to begin and who is set to arrive at what time, whether on your committee or setup volunteers, as well as the next bullet point, which is communicating with your vendors about arrival times, making sure that you know what time they're planning to arrive. They have the contact information, if it's your contact information or another person's contact information that they can contact if they need. Say maybe they can't find the location or have any issues come up. It's always good to make sure that you have that. And also arriving on time and unloading all supplies so you can get going with the day. We also encourage everyone, and well, strongly encourage that you collect all necessary permits and insurance. So for some, it depends on your walk location and it can differ province to province, community to community. But ensure that you have secured, if it's you need a food permit, a gaming permit, noise permit, event permit, anything that you might need, ensure that you have those I guess applied for and that you've received it. And if you need to work with your staff partner on this, I highly recommend that. They're the ones that would be able to provide the insurance certificate with you or for you. So definitely touch base with them on that if you have not done so yet. And also ensure to check rules within the park contract and review what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Some parks are they have certain rules and certain requirements about where things can be set up or how they can be set up. So make sure that you're doing that in advance so that you're not going against anything in your contract. All right, so now we're going to talk a bit about planning your event site. So if you haven't already done so, we recommend planning a site visit. It's nice to get maps and examples from the venue, but sometimes it's hard to visualize the space if you've never actually seen it in person. So we definitely recommend to go and plan a site visit or take a walk through if you haven't done so yet. When you're planning the layout of the site, try not to have the entertainment area or the stage too close to the registration area. And this is because you want to make sure that people can hear each other, especially at registration. That's kind of more the detail oriented area. And if you have a loud like music or band playing right beside it, it's going to be difficult to hear people. So ensure that you're spacing that out. As well, ensure that tents are not too close together, but also not super far apart. You don't want the tent to be way across the field to get your food, but you also don't need the tents to be all clustered side by side by side. You want to plan a site and a route map so that the setup is easy to complete, and make sure that you supply that with your setup volunteers or logistics captain, whoever might be helping with the setup. We recommend that when you arrive on walk day, do a quick walkthrough at the beginning of the day of the site. And if you, as much as you can of the walk route, just to ensure that there are no obstacles or anything that changed. I'll be honest with you folks, a couple years ago in Winnipeg, the day before they started construction on one of our sidewalks. So we had to very quickly change our route map. So it's always good to make sure that you check that in advance. Because you never know. Sometimes, cities have plans to do construction and you don't get to find that out until the moment. So highly suggest that. As well, you should also consider parking availability and ensure that your event can be easily located. If the parking isn't close by, consider stationing parking lot greeters to kind of direct people towards where the event is, and make sure that nobody gets lost. And don't forget to ensure that there are ample garbage and recycling bins. And don't forget to designate someone to change them if they're getting full. That's an easy oversight. If you're just kind of wondering, but you haven't asked anybody to change the garbage, make sure somebody just knows that if they notice it getting full, they can go and change the garbage. First aid. So at minimum, a complete and up-to-date first aid kit is required at all sites. Some sites, depending on the size, might have hired first aid volunteers like St. John Ambulance or another first aid company. Where possible, first aid should be in its own area with its own tent. That way that there's ample shade and privacy for if somebody needs first aid. It's important to work with your staff partner to ensure that you have some level of first aid at your event. So like I mentioned, some of it is just the first aid kit and some of it is having hired first aid. So ensure that you're referring to your event standards and finding out what level that should be and discussing it with your staff partner. As well, identify other volunteers who are first aid certified or have CPR. And that way, if an issue arises, you have maybe a couple extra people that you can flag. As well, you can refer to the crisis guidelines, which we will talk about in a little bit, if any issues arise. Washroom access. It's the topic that everybody wants to talk about. Of course, this is an event for Crohn's colitis, so we need to make sure that there are enough washrooms. So number one, ensure that there is adequate washroom access, and this includes both plumbed washrooms and portable washrooms. Obviously, I think I speak for most people when we say that plumb toilets are preferred over portable toilets. But that being said, a toilet is a toilet, and we want to make sure that there's enough for everybody. So if your location allows, you should have toilets along the walk route. That being said, some locations don't allow that. So if there are no washrooms allowed along the walk route, please ensure that you're properly communicating it with the participants, and it's a part of the MC speaking notes, just to make sure that everybody knows that, there might not be a washroom along the route, but or there's a public washroom at one point along the route. Just make sure that you're communicating where the washrooms are for the participants. As well, if you're renting portable toilets, there should be, if you can place them on the walk site, there should be at least one portable toilet around every kilometer mark. And if the route is a kind of there and back format, they're walking from the location to one point and turning around and coming back. Please try to ensure that there are washrooms accessible at the halfway or turnaround point. And that being said, these numbers are approximate. Some washrooms might need more, some might need less. And I would err on the side of more just in case, because we don't want people to have to wait for a washroom if we need it, right? So yeah, that is washroom access. And the crisis document, so the crisis guidelines. So responding to a crisis, this document is included in the registration packages. So your registration captain, if that's not you, your registration captain will have access to copies of this document, as well as it will be available on the volunteer hub. So you might be thinking, what are we talking about when we're talking about a crisis? So what is a crisis? It's any situation which threatens operations and can have negative consequences if not handled properly, impacting the community or the organization. So there's a number of different things that this can include. It can include a public safety crisis, a financial crisis, or a reputation crisis. If a crisis occurs, the Gutsy Walk accident and incident form must be filled out and reported within 72 hours to the Gutsy Walk team at gutsywalk@crohn'sandcolitis.ca and your staff partner. So if you need to fill out this form, make sure you let us know. And when to contact your staff partner. So you should be contacting your staff partner whenever you respond to a crisis or potential crisis, or it's safe to contact them if you're unsure if you're dealing with a crisis, but it's always good to loop them in. If you ever need to call 911, or if 911 is called, even if it's not you calling, but somebody else calls, notify your staff partner immediately, so that they're looped in as well. And if you can't reach your staff partner, contact our lovely Rachel Narcissus. Her information is here, so we can leave it on the screen for a second if you want to snap a screenshot of this, just so that you have it. But we also have the crisis document, a part of the registration package as well. So again, this is a really important thing. So make sure that you're familiar with this. Check it out on the volunteer hub if you need. And now I'm going to pass it over to Rachel to chat about the walk route.
Speaking of me, and I also just dropped my contact details in the chat if that's easier for you to copy and paste it. And as we mentioned, it will be on a document which provides a little bit more information about responding to a crisis as well in the registration package and on the hub. So if you need to check that out, do. And we also have the incident and accident report form available on the hub and in the registration packages in case you need it. But hopefully you don't. So now we're talking about the walk route. First of all, setting up your route. It's really important that when you are planning your actual walk route, you choose one that is obstacle-free and accessible for people using a mobility device as much as possible. If you haven't already planned your walk route and you're in conversation with your parks, they may actually have a suggested route that you can use, so it's always worth asking. Make sure that you have a clear and safe path, and that's part of the reason why we recommend that you visit it the day before or do a walkthrough when you first arrive to make sure that there's no obstacles and you can avoid surprises and plan ahead. If it's a wet and rainy day, make sure that you're not seeing any places that are likely to flood as the day goes on, etc. As we already talked about, ensure that there are enough washrooms and water stations along the route. The water is also important, especially if it's going to be a hot day, just making sure that you've got more access along there. And some other nice to have things depending on the size of your walk and your resources. You might have some route entertainment, maybe at the halfway point, or some walking band or something like that. You might even have some mascots. I know that some sites have some pretty cool toilet paper or poop emoji type costumes, as well as the Gutsy champion. We also encourage recognition signs, things for your top teams or your staff fundraisers, and potentially cheers at the end, people to clap and get excited as people return back to the walk site at the end of the walk. Day of route considerations. So as we said, make sure that your route is well marked. We do have kilometer markers that some sites are using, but you should also still have some signage and some volunteers along the route or a volunteer leading the route just to make sure that people know where they're going. If you invite we encourage you to invite important community members to kick off the walk with you. So that could be your honorary chair or community champion. Maybe you have special guests or local dignitaries or elected officials, or you can get some of your top fundraisers or your top team captain or someone like that to help kick off the walk. And as we said before, be sure to have the MC communicate the walk route and provide important information like where they can access washrooms along the walk, number of water stations, and things like that. And just give some high-level clear directions on where people are walking. Say, for example, following the yellow brick road.
Great. I'm going to talk a bit about branding and signage. So there's a number of different types of signage you might have at your walk location, and you want to make sure that you have ample signage on site and ensure that it's visible that the event is happening and that people are able to find it. The bigger that your walk is, the more signage that you're likely going to need. And like I said, there's a number of different types of signage for your event. So like you see on this list, that might include banners, like a start finish banner or a general Gutsy Walk banner, key area signage that might include registration, washroom directions, first aid, Stars Galaxy, or a couple other different ones that you guys might think of. Kilometer markers that include distance walked, as well as key facts about the organization or about Crohn's and colitis, as well as directions and additional route signage in terms of where the location is going or arrows, all these different types of signage that you might need. You can also have some thank you signage at the registration tent and other prominent areas.
Volunteers. So we do encourage you wherever possible to have a volunteer tent or a designated area specifically for volunteers. Depending on your walk size, at bare minimum, do have at least one core person that volunteers know to check in with when they first arrive and who they can talk to about their assignments and what they'll be doing for the day. It's really, really important that volunteers are never left alone. So pair people up. If you need to send someone to a further part of the site to set things up or as a direction marker along the route, make sure that you've got another volunteer going with them. And especially in set down or set up or pack down, just keep in mind that if you do need to be separated a little bit, make sure that volunteers are always staying within hearing and or eyesight of each other so that we always can keep each other safe and make sure nothing goes wrong. Depending on how your site works, you might have lanyards or the bright yellow vests, which are called pinnies for your volunteers. So just make sure that your volunteers are clearly marked and every single person who is volunteering day of has the lanyard or the pinny or both, depending on what you're doing. And don't forget to feed your volunteers. It's really important to make sure that everyone who's helping out on the day has access to food and that you're ensuring people are able to get some time to have that break and have the food that they're eating as well. So if that means that you've got to roster people on and off at different times to make sure everyone gets a break and gets a feed, please do that. And most importantly, don't forget to say thank you. This event really couldn't happen without all of our incredible volunteers, just like you. And so it is important that we remember to say thank you to everyone who shows up day of to help make the event happen.
All right, so setting up the registration tent. So we've already had one registration training, but we do have 2 more registration training sessions for the registration captains and registration volunteers. So we're not going to go super into detail on this topic. It's very high level. But if you'd like to join one of those sessions and you haven't been provided with the link, please put it in the chat and we're happy to just supply you with the link to join those sessions. The next one is actually tomorrow evening, if you'd like to join us. So on the high level aspect, when you're setting up registration, it's great to use greeters to welcome participants, have them, standing around the registration tent, inviting people to come visit the registration tent and encouraging them to check in there. It's also important to have enough volunteers that are trained on registration beforehand. So if you are a registration volunteer, we highly encourage that you either join one of those trainings or watch the recording so that you're familiar with the process, because it is probably the most detail-oriented process involved with Gutsy Walk. So we definitely recommend that you are trained beforehand so that you're not trying to kind of do it willy-nilly, because it's a little bit more difficult than that. Also participants are going to check in here. So they're going to receive any fundraising incentives that they might be eligible for, including team captain and star rewards. They might be picking up their t-shirt there if they raised money past the deadline to get their t-shirt sent to them before the event, if the location has t-shirts. And they also might need to pick up any applicable event day items. So like a ticket for lunch, or maybe there's a coupon given by a local sponsor, something like that. That's where they're going to go to do that. Don't forget to thank participants. Same as volunteers, we want to thank the participants, because again, without the participants at Gutsy Walk, we wouldn't be able to really do Gutsy Walk. We need to make sure that we're saying thank you to everybody. And you might want to plan ahead, include any handouts that you might want to have in the registration packages, or anything that you might want available. Maybe it's promotion for a chapter event coming up or something like that, or joining the chapter locally. You can definitely include something like that. And sometimes, depending on the size of the event, people have done different lines and separate lines for registration. So online funds only, as well as cash and check donations, if anybody's submitting that. And sometimes if the walk site allows, doing a star fundraiser line. So it's kind of like a VIP line, and that's where they can just kind of skip the line and get ahead, because those are our big fundraisers. And we will talk a little bit more about star fundraisers later in the presentation, if you're maybe kind of curious about what we're talking about, if you haven't heard yet. So yeah.
Refreshments, everybody's favorite topic. So it is important to plan ahead. Food is a big part and does require a lot of forethought. So make sure, first of all, that you've secured any necessary permits and that you're following all of your park and health and safety rules provided. So again, refer to your standards. If you do need something like a food permit or people with food handlers licenses, make sure that you've got all of that in place and that you're following any local regulations. Ensure you have enough volunteers to serve food. We do not allow participants to help themselves, so you do need to make sure that you've got people on site doing that and that you've got adequate numbers so that people aren't waiting too long in line to get their food. And of course, make sure that you have all the supplies ready to go and planned ahead. Some things to think through, obviously food and drinks, but you might also need coolers, platters, warming trays, depending on what kind of food you're serving. Don't forget things like plates, napkins, cutlery and cups, serving utensils, aprons, tinfoil, glad wrap, all those kinds of important things. If you're doing a barbecue, you'll need to make sure that you have the barbecue, things like your gas or propane, as well as your barbecue tools. It might be a good idea to have some tablecloths on hand, whether those are plastic ones you pick up from the dollar store, or maybe you've got a big supply of cloth ones that you can use and wash. Cleaning supplies, so you can clean up at the end. Lots of garbage bags. Don't forget your gloves and hairnets for the volunteers who are serving the food, and hand sanitizer as well, and having a readily accessible dish soap and bucket so that servers can wash their hands easily as well. In terms of menu planning, we encourage you to plan your menu in a way that offers variety as much as possible. For your bigger sites, that's going to look a lot bigger and going to be more possible. But even if you're a smaller site, having a few different options is still helpful. We particularly encourage you to keep in mind our community that we're serving and to have IBD-friendly options and consider other dietary restrictions, things like gluten-free, allergies, dairy-free, all those kinds of things. We also recommend things like peelable fruit, so you're not having to cut or wash anything. And you may even want to use little cards to display ingredients, just so people know what's in things and they can manage what they can and can't eat. And of course, make sure that water is accessible and available for all participants, even if you're taking donations for food or you've got some vendors on site selling, make sure that there's still free water accessible throughout the site. Some recommended plans for your day, depending on what time of day. If you're offering food free walk, we encourage things like light snacks, maybe some Simply Protein bars, coffee, tea, bananas, or something like that. After the walk, that's usually when we're looking at lunchtime. So depending on the size, that could look a little bit different, but things like sandwiches, pizzas, barbecues are quite popular. Throw in some more bananas or fruit, granola bars, Simply Protein bars, pop and juice and more. And you'll know why we're pushing the Simply Protein bars shortly as well. And again, I'll say it once more, don't forget to feed your volunteers, and that includes both making sure that there is food available to them as well as opportunity for them to take a break and eat their food.
All right. So entertainment and program. So creating your program. Ensure that your entertainment caters to all ages and is family friendly. Gutsy Walk is an event where we see, children as young as I think infants. I think last year at the Winnipeg Walk there was a baby, and I'm sure there has been at other ones, and grandparents and elders. So it's important to make sure that the entertainment is for everybody, or at least it's trying to be for everybody. It's also great to create a schedule of all your speakers, and don't forget to let them know what time they're going to speak and for how long you want them to speak for. And this is important because you don't want to just ask somebody to speak and not give them guidelines because they might plan to speak for 10 minutes, but you really only wanted them to speak for 2 minutes, and that's a little awkward. Provide your MC with a script, which a template will be coming from the Gutsy Walk team, and ensure that they're comfortable and bringing excitement to the event. It's good to designate a stage manager or a contact for local speakers to check in with, just somebody that can kind of be that go-to person for anything happening entertainment or speaker-wise. It is also great to, like we talked about kind of before about the planning the walk route, include any local officials or community members, your local or your honorary chair, or community champion in your program. And it's also a good idea to find someone to host a 5 to 10 minute warm up. Some people have done dance or fitness or yoga, something that is easy, gets people kind of just moving around and gets the excitement up before the walk begins. So setting the stage, setting up the stage and presentation area, you want to make sure that it's somewhere where everyone will be able to see it and not obstructed in any way. Like we mentioned before, it's important to avoid putting the stage too close to registration. And you want to ensure that prior to the event beginning and open to the public, any sound check is completed for anybody that needs sound check done. Because you don't want to be doing it when there's a bunch of participants there doing sound check. That might be a little awkward. Ensure that there are no loose wires or tripping hazards. So tape down or cover where needed. You don't want wires stringing across the main path or anything like that, because you don't want to open up the potential for anybody tripping on that. And set up tables and chairs if applicable, or an area for blankets or a suggested area for people to sit. So the first kind of part of the program, what we call it, is the opening ceremonies. So like we said, a script template will be provided by the Gutsy Walk team and is going to include ideas about music or entertainment and when people are arriving, general announcements leading up to the official start of the program, as well as a local land acknowledgement, welcome from special guests, dignitaries, sponsors, acknowledgement of star fundraisers and top teams, as well as information about the organization, things going on with us. We recommended, invite your honorary chair or community champion to speak at the event. It's always good to have people come up and share their story, share their why Gutsy Walk is important to them and why they do this. Because it's the community that brings us all together, and Gutsy Walk is a great day to hear that. It's also important to go over any housekeeping details. So explaining where the washrooms are, giving kind of a timeline of event, talking about any event day fundraising that might be happening, and also plugging what's going to happen after everybody returns from the walk. Like I said, it's great to have a warm up. So about 5 to 10 minutes of everybody getting warmed up. Ideas can include Zumba, stretching, dancing, yoga, whatever your fancy is, just something for everybody and something that all ages can do. Important to go over after the warm up is done. Any last minute housekeeping, it's good to repeat some of the important information like the washroom locations along the route, how long the route is, any directions, general directions, kind of saying like you're going to this street and turning here. Even though you'll probably have volunteers there, it's always good to give people an idea of where they're going to be going, and any additional details that might be important to do before the walk. And it's nice to invite important community members to kick off the walk with you with a ribbon cutting, an air horn, something similar. You can get creative with it. So that includes your honorary chair, community champion, any special guests, like local dignitaries, elected officials, star fundraisers, and your Gutsy Walk chair. Post walk. So this is once everybody has kind of returned from the walk and lunch might be happening, or a line might be gathering to check out everything going on. It's good to have music and entertainment during that time. Maybe some locations have a band or something cool happening on the stage, or maybe it's just as simple as having a DJ play music, something fun, lively that's going on, as well as including, like I said, lunch, like a barbecue or whatever it might be. Good time for people to network and talk to other people, as well as spend time with their friends and family. Maybe some people have not seen each other since last year's Gutsy Walk, so it's a good time for them to catch up too. And it's also an opportunity to check what else is going on. So there might be, like I said, event day fundraising, things like that. There might be some sponsor tents or any kind of other activations, so they can check out what's going on at the event. And then the closing ceremonies. So it might include more music and entertainment. We have say thank you on this list twice because, again, it's very important to say thank you. So thank you to everyone involved in the event, sponsors, volunteers, participants, every single person that's at the event. It's great to shout out the star fundraisers and top teams. You might be able to see who has raised the most and give them a special shout out, call them out by name. It's important to announce any winners of any raffle or contests. I realize that says announce winners of any raffle or contest winners. We're just trying to dial that point home. So yeah, announce any winners of anything. Maybe you have a local contest or anything special going on. And then announce a final total raised. So you can pull based on the numbers that you have at the event, and pull off of your location page on the Gutsy Walk website to give a kind of a number of the approximate number and counting, because there will be some money that comes in after Gutsy Walk Day as well. And yeah, say thank you again. End it with saying thank you because everybody's excited and they are appreciative when you say thank you.
Okay, so as Dara mentioned, there might be a few different things happening around your event day site. And this will obviously be used the most when people come back from the walk, but you might have some people who aren't able to do the full walk who will be hanging about during walk time as well. So it's good to have this running for a while. We're going to go through a couple of different types of activations that you might have throughout the site and how you can make that work. So the first one is event day fundraising. Obviously, one of the big things that we do at Gutsy Walk is fundraise. And while most participants have been working on that in the lead up to event day, there's still opportunity to bring in some more money to help with research and patient programs. So your staff partners will be working with you to ensure that we've got QR codes on some of the signage that's posted. You can post around the site, and this will take directly to your walk locations page so that people can donate there. Or you can tell people that they can look up a participant to donate to them as well. If you're holding any other additional ways to fundraise, just make sure that you've got a license if needed, for example, a raffle or something like that. So if you're not sure, check with your staff partner, as they're the ones that should be making sure that that's all done. If you're still looking for some fundraising ideas for day of, a couple of things that you can think of, lunch by donation, so a pay what you can situation with a cash box at the beginning of the line so that people can drop something in as they go through. You might want to do a 50-50 raffle. They're usually pretty popular. Or a prize raffle, silent auction, or even a live auction. You could have some exclusive draws or something like a rainbow auction. You may even want to do something like a bake sale or a plant sale. I know a few locations have some really successful plant sales, or anything cool like that that you've got the people for. Just a reminder, though, that if you are thinking of doing something a little bit different, make sure you've thought through the logistics and you have it all planned in place, and chat to your staff partner about it to make sure we can make it work. New this year, we are introducing a nationwide scavenger hunt. So we'll have two different versions of this. One is for your in-person sites. You'll get that from your staff partner and can work with your staff partner to localize it. It's a template with suggestions, but there are some spaces where we're encouraging you to make local opportunities. And this is just a way to engage your participants and also get them moving around the site and interacting with different areas and different things that are happening at your Gutsy Walk event. We also have an online version for people who are doing personal walks. So that's anyone who is signed up for a Gutsy Walk that doesn't have a physical in-person day of event, so that they can still participate in their local community as they walk the neighborhood. And this is just a fun way for all of us to come together a bit more and to help you as you're planning, get people moving in around the site and interacting and engaging with each other. So you've heard us mention star fundraisers a couple of times. If you haven't heard already, this year we are moving away from the term top pledge earner. I don't know about you, but when I first heard it, I had no idea what that meant. So moving forward, our TPEs are going to be called star fundraisers, and those are our top fundraisers. And as part of this, we will be having a stars galaxy, which is kind of like an exclusive special place for stars, and some of our top fundraisers to have a little bit more of an exclusive experience while they're at Gutsy Walk. We do actually have 3 different levels of star fundraisers. We've got our rising stars, anyone who raises $1,000 to $2,499. And then the next level is our shooting stars. So they're from 2,500 all the way up to 999,000. And then our superstars, as the name suggests, are the superstars, and they're the ones that are raising 10,000 plus. So each one of these levels will be receiving a different reward this year. In the past, our TPE gifts have been the same, whether you are raising $1,000 or $30,000. So this year we will see a little bit of a difference there. And we've gone over what that looks like with our registration training. So if you're on registration, make sure you do that training to learn more there. And as I mentioned, some sites will have that exclusive area for Stars fundraiser. It could include things like having star stickers. I know that Montreal, for example, is doing a really cool activation in combination with the gala happening later in the year for their stars, where they're going to have a fake bouncer and handing out non-alcoholic champagne. And I've been talking to some of the other staff partners who have some really cool ideas, like a big Star wall and things like that as well. So if you haven't already, chat to your staff partner to learn more about what you're doing locally and how you can help get that set up. The impact zone. So, of course, we are all here at the end of the day because we are walking to stop Crohn's and colitis. And we've been raising over $52 million over the last 20 odd years. In that vein. So we want to talk more about what is that money doing, and what is the impact of us walking and fundraising as part of Gutsy Walk. So again, this will look a little bit different from site to site, but chat to your staff partner about how you're doing an impact zone locally if you haven't already. Some places will have a full tent and some volunteers or staff to talk a bit more about some of the programs. We will also be providing a brochure, which will be available to be handed out as part of this, just sharing a bit more about some of the impact that your donations have had over the last 50 years. And ensure that if there is any volunteers in your impact zone, that they are comfortable answering questions and that they know who to contact or whose contact details to provide if they get questions they can't answer. We also have the Camp Got to Go Kids Zone. So this is just an area for younger kids and under 18s. When you're setting this up, make sure that your games are inclusive and fun for all ages. We encourage you to think through all the activities that you're going to offer ahead of time. Make sure that you know exactly what supplies you need, figure out who's getting them, who's bringing them, and also schedule who's going to be running each activity as part of the kids zone. Any plans if you're transitioning from one activity to another of what's going to happen during that setup period, and any other sort of things that you may need to think of logistically or in terms of having people on site to make those activities work. It's also really important that we ensure no children are left unattended. Make it really clear to parents as they're coming that this is not childcare. You can't drop your kid and leave, but parents do actually need to stay with their children in sight. And they do need to have some kind of supervisor with them. And just a reminder, no inflatables, no bouncy castles or anything like that. If you're doing something like balloon animals, that's okay, but no large inflatables as our insurance and liability doesn't cover that. And we don't want anyone, including you as volunteers, being responsible financially or legally if something goes wrong. That's the main reason why we're not doing it. It is to keep all of us safe and ensure that no one is in a tricky situation. Hopefully we'll get some media out day of, so make sure that you have a designated staff or volunteer person who is the media check-in and who can handle any media as they arrive. Larger sites should also have a check-in area for media. Give all the other volunteers a general sense of where to direct media and who to direct them to if they do have media turn up, and just make sure that volunteers know that unless they are the designated media volunteer, they don't need to talk to the media. And if the media starts trying to ask them for questions or interviews and they're not prepped for that, to just direct them to the media person. Make sure that you connect with your honorary chairs, community champions, or any other volunteers or participants who have been identified as willing to be interviewed at the event, and so that they're aware of their responsibilities and that they're available to be reached if media do turn up and do want to do some interviews. We also encourage you to have a photographer on site, whether that's someone that you've hired or whether it's a volunteer. It could be a professional photographer who's volunteering their time and their talents, or it could just be a volunteer who's pretty good with their camera and has a decent camera or a good camera phone who's going to be taking pictures of the event. And share those with your staff partner after the fact so that we can get them and add them to the Gutsy Walk 2024 photo collection, and continue to use those in future things like this presentation for next year, as well as our social, our media, our website, all those kinds of fun things. And speaking of social, if you do have a volunteer available to do social on your local channels, that would also be a great day of. Sponsorship. So depending on your site and what local sponsors you may have, you may need to work with your staff partner to plan some activations around your sponsors. If you do have sponsors who are turning up day of and expecting to have a spot, make sure that you have someone designated as the main contact for them to talk to, and who can help support them setting up when they arrive. And you may also want to do that with corporate teams. So if you have some corporate teams, you might need someone who's just going to be available to support them and work with them as well. And the exciting news is that this year we have a national partnership with Simply Protein. They provide healthy protein bars. It's an organization that was actually started by someone with IBD, and therefore they're great for a number of the different dietary requirements that our community often has. And as part of that partnership, we will be providing Simply Protein bars at every single in-person Gutsy Walk this year. So stay tuned for more details there. Chat to your staff partner to learn more about where those will be arriving, and quantities, and make sure that you've thought through how you're going to hand those out, whether it's going to be part of your menu offerings or whether you want to hand it out at registration.
All right. So we went over a lot of stuff, but we didn't want to forget to include some information about wrapping the event up and tearing it all down, which is at the end of the day, a little bit the last step in the process before you get to go home and celebrate or sleep, whatever your choice is. So once the event has concluded, it's important to begin to clean up and collect all supplies. Make sure that everything that you brought goes home with you or goes into the garbage if it's garbage. Ensure that all volunteers check out with the volunteer captain or the designated person prior to heading out. It's very important that that's communicated with volunteers, because if somebody hasn't checked out and they're no longer there, then there might be a concern of where their whereabouts is. So make sure that they know that they should check out with someone before they leave. Pack everything up and do a quick walk around the site. Be sure to leave no trace and pick up any litter. We want to be good guests to whatever sites we are using. So make sure that we are leaving the site as we found it. Drop off any supplies to storage or follow the discussed plan with the committee or your staff partner. Some people might take it home for the day to reorganize it, or just not, if the storage locker isn't on your way home, that might be the situation. But make sure that there's a plan in place. And then the registration captain is also responsible to fulfill their duties, because they have very specific duties that involve sending in forms to the Gutsy Walk team and depositing any event day funds. And most importantly, rest. We started this with let's get a good night's sleep before, but also take care of yourself once the event is done, and rest and do what you need.
Important reminders. So we're getting towards the end of this training, but we do want to just leave you with a few important things to keep in mind. So first of all, we've said it already, but remember to plan ahead. The more you plan, the less opportunity for things to go wrong or for you to forget something. So double check to make sure that you have all the permits needed, any contracts are being followed, and all of those good things. Refer to your event standards, and ensure that you're meeting them. And as we said before, if you haven't seen the event standards, please check in with your staff partner to access those. If you have any concerns about meeting the event standards, talk to your staff partner. They will have a conversation with you, and you may even get to have a conversation with me. But regardless, we want to set you up for success. So if there are any concerns, let us know sooner rather than later so that we can manage that in whatever way makes sense. Again, make sure that you map out your site and that you know where things are going, being prepared to have to move that a little bit day of if something changes. Do a walkthrough the day before to avoid any surprises, or the morning of, or both, and make sure that you are monitoring the weather in the lead up and that you are prepared for that. And of course, create memories. You are there just as much as any participant to enjoy this day, and you're here as a volunteer for Gutsy Walk because this is something that's really important to you. So make sure that you get to enjoy the day for yourself as well. Don't forget to take photos, and make sure that you find a moment to take just a little bit of time out for yourself. Appreciate all that you've made happen as a volunteer. And also remember to encourage attendees to take pictures and share them on social media, Gutsy Walk 2024. And of course, don't forget to say thank you to volunteers, to participants, to sponsors, to people turning up and learning more. And also another reminder for you that all the tools that we've mentioned during today's presentation, as well as the recording of this presentation and your event day checklist and timeline template, can be found on the Gutsy Walk Volunteer Hub. If you don't have access to it, please contact your staff partner, or if you're having trouble getting into it, I know it can be a little bit confusing for some of us, and that's a-okay. Just let your staff partner know, and they or someone on the Gutsy Walk team will help get you set up and sorted so that you can access all the materials. And some of the things that we mentioned will also be physically printed out and sent to the registration captain as part of the registration packages. So if you aren't a registration captain, make sure that you touch base with your local registration captain to get access to some of those important pieces of paperwork as well. And most importantly, we've told you tonight a million times to say thank you, but we just want to take this moment to say thank you to you. I know that I've said already Gutsy Walk wouldn't happen without volunteers, and it really wouldn't. And you are the backbone of this entire event and campaign. You're the ones that are here on a Tuesday night. I almost said Wednesday, but we're not that far through the week. You're here on a Tuesday night, giving up your time to be prepared. You're here because you're in a leadership role and you're dedicated, and you've already done a lot of work for this event, and you will continue to do a lot of work in the lead up and on the day. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. It really is so important and makes such a big difference, and we are so appreciative of it. So appreciative that I can't speak. I'm that excited. But genuinely, thank you. And so on that note, I know we've shared a lot of information with you, but we are going to open it up. Feel free to put your hand up through Zoom if you have a question, or to pop your question into the chat. And if there's anything that we've left unanswered at the end of this session time, we will also be available via email. So feel free to follow up with us, gutsywalk@crohnsandcolitis.ca. But I will stop speaking and give you an opportunity to ask any questions. So I see we have a great question in the chat. The volunteer hub is something that all our core volunteers should have access to. So if you haven't been given access yet, contact your staff partner and they'll be able to help set you up, including getting you login instructions on how to do that. And yes, you can use the penny from last year with the Gutsy champion on it. We have not updated the volunteer pennies, so we will be using the same pennies this year. Great question. Hopefully you can't hear my dog whining in the background. I know it can be a bit daunting to ask questions in a big group. So if you do want to send it privately to us, you can use the blue button in the chat function where it currently says to everyone, and you can select Dara's name, Amara's name, or my name, Rachel. Or you can follow up with us via email. If you don't have any questions, feel free to hop off now, but we're going to stay on until everyone's left to answer any questions. And I see we just got another question in the chat. Is new signage coming? Yes, we are working with staff partners. So depending on your signage needs, we will be providing you with signage according to what you had last year and what you need this year. If you do need to drop off and now, thank you again so much for joining us. And as we said, we will hang on in case you have any more questions.